In case you didn't hate Nintendo enough, I hope every one of you who bought the Switch 2 after they jacked prices up and aren't selling you physical games are regretting your life choices after Nintendo admits that it openly hates charities. And I'm not even joking on this one. Nintendo has literally come out to a charity in Japan who was running speedrunning competitions and was going to have some of their games as speedruns. That's right, the charity was going to raise money from people playing video games, and Nintendo has to come in with its tiny peepee and say, "You can't use our games for charity." And I've got the article here, and I've got the website that was actually running the charity. Nintendo issued a warning to a speedrunning charity event in Japan, which led to organizers pulling its games from their lineup as the biggest charity speedrunning series in Japan. So we're not talking like some offshoot that was like stealing money like Ian and Anissa Jama, like iDubbbz where they pocketed 30% and then stole some more money and did all some nasty shit and called it a charity event when in the contract it was never actually charity, and the charity was its own entity that you had to go to some like fifth page and go to a completely different website to donate to the charity. No, it wasn't that. This is a legit charity that was raising money, and Nintendo comes in and says, "No, you can't do that. No raising money for charity. Not in Nintendo." But of course, I'm sure the Nintendo Sims will be in the comment. "Well, they're Nintendo games. You just can't raise money for people by playing Nintendo games." Shut the fuck up. According to Automaton, there was no official explanation behind this at the time. However, now the event organizers have shed some light on the situation, revealing that the exclusion of Nintendo titles was due to them getting a warning. On their website, they explained they were contacted by Nintendo and were told that as a legal entity, they would have to ask permission in advance. Oh my god, Nintendo. Oh my god. Given that the RTA hopes to stream Nintendo games in the future, the organizers have to decide to comply with the permission. Good, good. Fuck Nintendo. And I'm glad they put out the article saying, yeah, Nintendo says they don't want us raising money for charity by playing their games, so we're not going to play their games, and we're going to publicly announce that Nintendo is doing that. So good for them. Because of this, however, they explained that the game application guidelines and requirements are expected to change. Though they'll provide information as soon as they have all the details, for now fans shouldn't expect to see games like Mario or Legend of Zelda in the upcoming event now that they've opened up about Nintendo's warning. So thank God for browser translations here, because without it I wouldn't know what the hell they were saying. But Nintendo quite literally is saying, we don't want to be in any charity. We want all the money for ourselves, because we know if Nintendo was going to host this event, they'd charge a fee to sign in, and they'd give like a small fraction of a percentage to charity and keep the rest for themselves. This isn't about Nintendo protecting their IP. As we've seen with them locking down and breaking people's switches as soon as they do anything that Nintendo doesn't like. If you were a live streamer, I'm sure they could brick your Nintendo, figure out who you are by your username, and brick your Switch for saying something nasty while you're playing a Switch too. Let's not pretend like that's not a possibility here. But let's see what RTA in Japan says. We would like to explain how we've come to use games for which Nintendo holds the copyright here and blah 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 in RTA in Japan, and why Nintendo games are not being used at RTA. RTA in Japan has previously used Nintendo games, but on June 13th, 2025, Nintendo pointed out to use Nintendo games by a corporation requires permission. It doesn't. I mean, maybe in Japan, because, fucking Nintendo owns Japan regardless of what people actually want. Let's not pretend like this isn't the robber barons. Let's not pretend like it's the early 1900s in the US. We tell you, we are Nintendo. Fuckers. Oh god, I fucking hate what Nintendo's become. Nintendo used to be fun. Nintendo used to have all sorts of crazy stuff. Now it's like, nah, you can't raise money for charity by even playing our games. Get the fuck out of here. So they pointed out to use Nintendo games by corporation requires permission, blah, 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 read all that. Previous use was without prior permission and constituted unauthorized use. RTA in Japan wishes to continue using Nintendo games and has begun discussions with Nintendo. And I'm sure they'll have them sign some contract where they get a cut of the money, because that's exactly what this is about. And from the way it reads from the article and what they're saying, it's almost like they didn't pick the games themselves. They didn't tailor it. And they're like, oh yeah, if you have submissions and we get enough submissions for games, we'll totally let you guys speedrun those. We'll get the games and you guys can speedrun those and we'll raise money for charity. But I'm sure Nintendo's actually pissed that there are going to be better games and better consoles than what Nintendo's putting out. And they'll be like, if you're going to do Nintendo games, it has to be Nintendo only. We can't actually compete against other consoles or other games. As of now, the decision has been made by the RTA in Japan that will submit individual licensing applications. Yeah, there it is, licensing applications. They want cuts of the fucking money. They want to take money out of the charity and just to have their game in there. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. They want a cut of the money from the fucking charity rather than the charity giving money to charities. However, in RTA Japan, Japan Summer 25, we were unable to clearly determine how to handle this at the time the participating games were announced, so we decided not to use Nintendo games. Good job, Nintendo. You fucked people out of money who could have actually used it from a charity. Good fucking job. You know, I'd like to think the people who paid those exorbitant prices and are paying like nearly $100 for a Switch 2 game and getting jack shit out of it and have to worry about their console getting bricked are regretting their choices, but I know that Nintendo Peni is so far up their ass they can taste it. So yeah, they're not going to do anything. They're not going to say anything about this. For events held at RTA in Japan after RTA in Japan 2025, it is expected permission will be submitted in advance from Nintendo Co. and the permissions will be granted before. Yeah, you know what? I'm sure Nintendo will do this again. I'm sure Nintendo will find some way in their licensing schemes to be like, we need X amount percentage of the dollars that you raise, and you can only use certain games, and can't compete against other consoles. I'm sure that's what Nintendo will do. Because with as shitty as Nintendo has been, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. As a result of this, it's expected the RT in Japan game application guidelines and application requirements will change. Oh, see, even they know that this is going to change everything. They know that Nintendo's going to change all the licensing depending on what they do. If they make a certain amount of money, Nintendo's going to come back and be like, nope, you can't use our games unless you give us more money. I'm sure that's what's going to happen. And we will notify you as soon as we have details that have been decided. We would also like to apologize to the guests who submitted games that were affected by this issue, affected by Nintendo being a piece of shit. They're apologizing for Nintendo being a piece of shit. A charity shouldn't apologize for a company being a piece of shit because the company wants to be a piece of shit and not let them play games to raise money for charity. That's not RTA Japan's role in this at all. They shouldn't be apologizing. They should be like, hey, Nintendo's being shitty, but I mean, I guess it's Japan and Nintendo would just sue them into oblivion because, you know, Japan bends over backwards for Nintendo. But I mean, this is just adding to the long list of shitty things Nintendo is doing. Like, when Nintendo went to Steam and made them remove the Dolphin emulators, which are completely legal, but applied enough pressure to Steam to get them pulled down. I don't know if anybody remembers that. I know that was early in the channel and I covered that because that was bullshit. But yeah, Nintendo does that. And then, of course, we've got the whole Switch 2 fiasco. We've got all the stuff with Nintendo banning fan-made games and going after them legally for fan-made games. I think Pokemon Uranium was probably the biggest one because it had millions of downloads in like the first 24 hours. It was completely fan-made with completely fictional Pokemon that weren't even there. And Nintendo's like, but use the Pokemon game. You can't use the Pokemon name. And didn't even make them change it. It says they have to delete everything. I remember that. They said they had to delete everything. So the only people who have Uranium are the people who downloaded it, and it's never getting patched, and they have to share it around between each other. All because Nintendo got jealous that the fans do better than Nintendo. Oh my god. Yeah, anytime someone does better than Nintendo, they get jealous and they start shaking their tiny pee-pee around thinking they're hot shit, and it's like, fuck you, Nintendo. But guys, leave your thoughts in the comments section. While you're there, make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you share this one out. And don't have the little dick energy like Nintendo. Be big bald. Are you tired of that boring, bland coffee? The generic shill coffee? The generic no-name coffee? Well, check this out. We have the Dragon's Treasure tea today. Now here at the Dragon's Treasure, you will find teas for everybody's taste. Everything you could possibly imagine, including soaps. That's right, you know you stink at the end of the day, so make sure you check out those soaps. They're actually pretty nice. I would recommend them, especially for your convention goers. This is something you desperately need. But wait, there's more. We have the Dragon's Treasure coffee. Now, this isn't your normal dropship coffee here. This is the Dragon Treasure Special. Here we have a beautiful blend of different coffees to fulfill all your taste bud needs. But wait, there's even more. Use the promo code Sleazy Society and get a 10% discount on your order. That's right, guys. Be like me. Be a good Jew. Get a nice little discount while you're at it. Shop at the Dragon's Treasure. And did I mention that every bag of tea comes with a hot waifu sticker on it? Save those, collect them, trade them. I don't care what you do with them, but just buy the Dragon's Treasure tea.